My family trusted a loving father and a kind nurse, until I uncovered a twisted insurance plot to murder my daughter cold blood. The morning in Medford, a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Boston, was peaceful as always. Linda Carter was preparing breakfast for her children in the kitchen while gazing out at the autumn landscape spreading beyond the window. The maple leaves were beginning to turn golden, and the last roses in the neighbor's garden were blooming beautifully. Her face showed the fulfillment of a mother raising 2 children while working from home as a web designer. "Mom, help me with my homework today," 11-year-old Ryan called out as he rushed down the stairs. Ryan was a responsible boy with brown hair inherited from his father and gentle eyes like his mother's. His deep affection for his 9-year-old sister, Emma, was particularly touching as he was always looking out for her, which warmed Linda's heart. "Of course, Ryan." "Math problems?" Linda turned around with a smile. "Yeah, I don't understand dividing fractions." Just then, light footsteps echoed from the stairs. Emma appeared in her white pajamas, rubbing her still sleepy eyes and greeting them with good morning. Emma was lively and bright, like the sunshine of the family. She kept her long brown hair in a ponytail and never stopped smiling. "Good morning, Princess." Linda kissed Emma's cheek and said, "You're full of energy today, too. Mom, today we're playing dodgeball in PE." "I'm definitely going to win." Emma showed her clenched fist. Linda savored the preciousness of these casual moments while enjoying breakfast with her children. Her husband, Mark, worked as a sales manager at the pharmaceutical company Atlantic Pharma and had recently been promoted. Mark was hardworking and dedicated to providing for his family. Their income had increased compared to before, and financial worries had lessened. "Has Dad already left for work?" Ryan asked. "Yes, he had an important meeting today and left early," Linda answered, while recalling what Mark had talked about last night. He had an important presentation about the sales strategy for a new drug, and if successful, there was a possibility of further promotion. Linda and Mark had met in college and married right after graduation. Back then, they were both young and full of dreams for the future. Linda studied graphic design while Mark majored in chemistry. After marriage, when Ryan was born, Linda started working from home as a web designer. Her clients were mainly local small business owners. While the income wasn't very high, she liked this way of working because it allowed her to spend precious time with her children. When Emma was born, the family felt complete. Mark supported Linda's child-rearing by saying, "You're doing the most important job." On weekends, the family would go to parks in Boston or play at the beaches of Cape Cod. Photos of the children holding Mark's big hands with their small ones and laughing in Linda's arms were displayed all over the living room walls. However, things began to look troubling 2 months ago. Emma suddenly started getting sick. At first, they thought it was a cold, but fever and fatigue continued, and her appetite declined. When they visited their family doctor, the diagnosis was probably a seasonal cold. However, symptoms didn't improve even after a week. "How is Emma doing?" Mark asked first thing every night when he came home. His face showed deep worry. "Maybe we should have her examined at a bigger hospital." Linda was thinking the same thing. Seeking a second opinion, they visited a general hospital in Boston. They conducted various tests, including blood tests, urine tests, and x-rays, but no abnormalities were found. Still, Emma's condition didn't recover, and she began missing school frequently. "Doctor, what illness does my daughter have?" Linda asked the physician. "At this time, we cannot provide a clear diagnosis. However, there's a possibility that something is putting stress on her immune system. Let's observe her for a while and conduct more detailed tests if necessary." At that point, Mark stood up. "Actually, there's a doctor at my company who is close to the pediatric department head at this hospital. Could you write us a referral letter? I want my daughter to receive the best medical care." The doctor gladly wrote the referral letter. Mark's pharmaceutical company was famous in the medical industry and had business relationships with many hospitals. Linda was grateful to her husband for being able to use Mark's connections to get Emma better treatment. Last week, hospitalization was finally decided. "This is a temporary measure. We'll conduct intensive tests and identify the cause," the attending physician explained. Emma seemed a little anxious, but she said, "I want to get better quickly and play with my school friends," bravely agreeing to hospitalization. This morning, too, Linda was feeding her children breakfast as usual, while sincerely wishing for Emma's recovery. The doctors were doing their best. Once the cause was identified and treatment began, her daughter would surely return to her original healthy self. St. Mary's General Hospital. The pediatric ward at St. Mary's General Hospital was decorated in bright pastel colors. Animal pictures were drawn on the walls, designed to help children feel less anxious. 3 weeks had passed since Emma's hospitalization, but a clear diagnosis had not yet emerged. "Emma, how are you feeling today?" Nicole Johnson, the attending nurse, entered the room with her usual bright smile. She had been working in the pediatric ward for 5 years and was trusted by the children. With her long blonde hair in a ponytail and wearing pink scrubs, she looked like the ideal nurse. "Nicole, good morning." Emma showed a weak but smiling face. Her complexion looked a little better compared to when she was first admitted, but she was still far from her original energy. "Do I have to take medicine today, too?" "Yes. Let's take the medicine and get better quickly," Nicole answered while preparing a syringe. "I'll mix it in your four so it won't be bitter." Linda visited the hospital every morning to spend time with Emma. She did her work at home late at night or early in the morning, wanting to be by her daughter's side as much as possible during the day. Sitting in the chair by the window in the hospital room, she looked at the pictures Emma had drawn. "You drew this so well. When you're discharged, let's frame it and display it." "Really, Mom? When can I go home?" There was a wistful tone in Emma's voice. "The doctor says we need a few more tests, but you'll definitely get better, so don't worry." Linda held Emma's hand. Her daughter's hand had become much thinner than before. Mark could hardly visit on weekdays. His responsibilities as a sales manager at the pharmaceutical company were heavy, and he had been extremely busy recently with new drug sales strategies. "I'm sorry, Linda. I have another business trip this week." Mark visited the hospital room on Saturday night with a tired expression. "I need to work to earn money, or I'll worry about medical expenses too." "I understand." Emma says, "Daddy is working hard at his job." Linda comforted her husband. "Just coming on weekends is enough." Mark sat beside Emma's bed and stroked her head, saying, "Daddy's little princess, you're doing great." Emma happily reported, "Daddy, I'm taking my medicine properly." "Good girl." Nurse Nicole said, "Emma is an exemplary patient." Mark's words made Nicole smile and nod. "That's right. Emma is really a good child and takes her medicine without complaining," Nicole answered gently. "You've known each other from before, haven't you, Mr. Carter?" "Yes, we've met several times through company business. I never thought my daughter would be in your care," Mark smiled wryly. Linda learned for the first time that her husband and the nurse knew each other. Indeed, since Mark's company did business with many hospitals, he probably had many contacts with medical professionals. As long as it was good for Emma, there was no problem. On weekday afternoons, Ryan would visit the hospital with his mother after school. He worried about Emma's illness while trying to act cheerful. "Emma, I got a perfect score on my math test today." Ryan proudly showed his answer sheet. "Amazing." Emma clapped her hands in joy. "I want to go back to school soon. I want to see everyone." "It's okay. You'll be back soon. Until then, I'll report on what's happening in class every day." Ryan's kindness warmed Linda's heart. However, one evening, she noticed that Ryan's behavior seemed a little different. He was quieter than usual and seemed to be lost in thought. "Ryan, what's wrong? Did something happen at school?" Linda asked worriedly. "Nothing." Ryan shook his head, but his expression didn't brighten. In the hospital room, Emma's symptoms continued to go up and down. There were good days and days when she had a fever and seemed to be suffering. The attending physician, Dr. Williams, was carefully observing her progress but hadn't reached a definitive diagnosis. Looking at the blood test values, there's definitely an inflammatory response, but we don't see signs of infection. The doctor explained to Linda and Mark, "There's no doubt that something is putting stress on her immune system." "So, what's the future treatment plan?" Mark asked. We'll continue the current immunomodulatory medication while conducting more detailed tests. We're also consulting with specialists, considering the possibility of rare diseases. Linda tried to find hope in the doctor's words. With specialists involved, the cause would surely be identified. Nurse Nicole changed Emma's for and administered medication at set times every day. Linda was deeply grateful for her dedicated nursing care. "Nicole, thank you for everything," Linda said to the nurse one day. "Oh no, this is my job. Emma is a particularly adorable patient." Nicole smiled. "Her father calls me frequently saying, 'Please take care of my daughter.'" Linda didn't know that Mark was contacting the hospital so frequently, thinking that even though he was busy with work, he was always concerned about his daughter made her heart warm. However, Ryan's condition became increasingly unstable. While he seemed to enjoy talking with his sister during hospital visits, silence often continued on the way home. "Ryan, are you really okay? If you have any worries, please talk to me." Linda placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "Mom?" Ryan turned around and looked at his mother with a serious expression. If I knew something important, but couldn't tell adults. Could that happen?" Linda was puzzled by her son's words. "You should be able to tell Mom anything. If you're troubled, let's solve it together." Ryan started to say something but ended up closing his mouth. "Never mind. I'm just worried about Emma." The night, everything changed. That night, Linda was pressed by a work deadline. She had a major corporate website renewal project and absolutely had to submit materials by the end of the day. Usually, she would visit the hospital early in the afternoon, but this day she had to concentrate on work until evening. "Ryan, we're late today, but let's go see Emma." Linda called to her son at 5:30 in the evening. "Okay," Ryan answered, but tension showed in his expression. In the car to the hospital, Ryan kept looking at his watch. Visiting hours were until 8 p.m., but he seemed anxious about the later-than-usual visit. "It's okay. We still have time," Linda tried to reassure her son. "Emma must be waiting for us." However, Linda herself felt a certain uneasiness. Ryan's recent behavior and the anxiety about her daughter's illness not improving at all were stirring in the depths of her heart. When they parked in the hospital parking lot, the two looked at each other. Then, holding hands, they headed to the pediatric ward. Walking down the hospital corridor, Linda noticed that Ryan's hand was colder than usual. The evening ward was quieter than usual, with only the sound of nurses' footsteps echoing. As they approached room 302 in pediatrics, Ryan's pace slowed. "Ryan, what's wrong?" Linda stopped and looked at her son. "Nothing." Ryan shook his head, but his voice was trembling. "I just want to see Emma quickly." When they knocked on the hospital room door, a bright voice came from inside. "Come in." It was Emma's voice. Linda and Ryan looked at each other and smiled, then opened the door. "Mom!" "Ryan!" Emma was reading a picture book on her bed, but when she saw them, she happily waved her hand. Although an IV tube was connected to her arm, she seemed relatively energetic today. "Emma, how are you feeling today?" Linda approached her daughter's bedside and placed her hand on her forehead. She didn't seem to have a fever. "Yeah, I'm okay, but I'm a little tired," Emma answered while being hugged by her mother. "Nicole said she would give me special medicine today. She said if I take it, I'll feel much better." Linda embraced Emma, feeling pain in her chest as her daughter's body seemed lighter than usual. She had definitely lost weight since hospitalization. The doctor explained it as temporary loss of appetite, but her worry only grew. Did anything interesting happen today? Emma turned to Ryan. Ryan looked at his sister's smile and started to say something, then closed his mouth. At that moment, footsteps could be heard from the corridor. Regular, slow steps. It was a nurse's footsteps. Suddenly, Ryan's expression changed. His face went pale, and his whole body stiffened. He quickly approached the hospital room door and peered into the corridor. Then he turned around and whispered to his mother in a trembling voice, "Mom, hide behind the curtain." Linda was confused by her son's sudden words. "Why, Ryan? What's wrong? Just hurry, please." Fear showed in Ryan's eyes. His desperate expression made Linda gasp. She had never seen her son make such a face. Emma also looked at her brother anxiously. "What's wrong?" The footsteps were approaching the hospital room door. Ryan grabbed his mother's arm and pushed her behind the bedside curtain. "Absolutely don't make a sound, please." Linda was overwhelmed by her son's fearful expression and quickly hid behind the curtain. Her heart was beating violently. She couldn't understand at all why she had to hide. However, Ryan's trembling voice and pale face indicated that something serious was happening. From the gap in the curtain, Linda could see the hospital room. Ryan stood beside Emma's bed, trying to act normal, but his tension was obvious. There was a knock, and the door opened. Nurse Nicole entered with a syringe and 4-bag. She had her usual bright smile, but her eyes quickly scanned the room. "Oh, Ryan, you're late today." Nicole called out to her son. "Where's your mother?" In the bathroom, Ryan answered desperately, trying to maintain composure. "I see." Nicole nodded lightly and approached Emma's bed. "Emma, tonight is special medicine. If you take this, you'll surely feel much better tomorrow." Linda held her breath behind the curtain. Nicole's voice was as gentle as always, but she felt something strange. The words "special medicine" stuck oddly. Nicole took out a syringe and began connecting it to the 4-line. The movement was practiced, but tonight she was somehow different. "Tonight's final medication will definitely," Nicole murmured as if talking to herself. "This will fulfill my promise to Mark." Linda felt all the blood in her body freeze. A promise to Mark? Why was her husband's name coming from Nicole's mouth? And what did definitely mean? Emma looked up at Nicole anxiously. "Nicole, is this medicine bitter?" "It's okay, Emma. You'll feel better soon," Nicole answered while checking the contents of the syringe. The liquid was colorless and transparent, but it seemed somehow different from the usual medicine. Linda's hand trembled as it reached for the smartphone in her pocket. Instinctively, she felt she had to record this moment. She quietly operated the screen and activated the recording function. "Emma, you'll really feel better with this." Nicole was about to connect the syringe to the 4-line. At that moment, something cold passed across her expression. "You won't have to suffer anymore." At that moment, Ryan shouted, "Stop!" Nicole turned around in surprise. "Ryan, what's wrong?" "That injection is wrong." Ryan stood in front of Emma's bed, trembling. "You're planning to kill Emma." Nicole's face changed instantly. The gentle expression from moments before disappeared, replaced by cold eyes. "What are you saying, Ryan? This is medicine for treatment." "You're lying. You're planning this with Dad." "I heard everything." Ryan's voice became tearful. "Last week at night, I heard Dad talking to someone on the phone. He said, Emma's life insurance is 50 million yen. With this, we can start a new life." Linda nearly stopped breathing behind the curtain. Insurance money, a new life. It took several seconds to understand the meaning of her son's words. Nicole tried to hide the syringe in panic, but her movements clearly showed her agitation. "Ryan, you're a child, so you're misunderstanding. Eavesdropping on adult conversations is not a misunderstanding." Ryan cried out through tears. "I know you've been putting strange medicine in Emma too. Every day, little by little, you've been weakening Emma." Emma was confused on her bed. Unable to understand the meaning of her brother's words, she looked back and forth between Nicole and Ryan. "What do you mean?" At that moment, Linda burst out from behind the curtain. She couldn't hide anymore. "What are you trying to do?" Linda shouted while rushing toward Nicole and knocking the syringe from her hands. Nicole was completely agitated, dropped the syringe on the floor and backed away. "Linda, this is a misunderstanding. I was just..." "A misunderstanding?" Linda's voice trembled with anger. "Is what my son heard a misunderstanding? What's this promise with Mark? What's this about insurance money?" Nicole couldn't answer and tried to escape from the hospital room, but Linda grabbed her arm. "Don't run away. What did you do to my daughter?" Linda pressed the nurse call button in the hospital room. "Help. Call security." The buzzer sounded. and other nurses and security guards rushed over immediately. Nicole was completely distraught and tried to make some excuse but couldn't find words. "This nurse tried to kill my daughter," Linda accused with a trembling voice. "Please examine the contents of the syringe that fell on the floor." Security restrained Nicole, and the syringe that fell on the floor was carefully collected. Emma was crying on her bed, and Ryan was hugging his sister, repeatedly saying, "It's okay now, it's okay now." The attending physician, Dr. Williams, rushed over, and after grasping the situation, immediately contacted the police. Then he said to Linda, "We'll analyze the contents of the syringe immediately. If Ryan's testimony is true," the doctor's face was pale, "it might explain all of Emma's symptoms so far." Linda hugged her son. "Ryan, you were so brave. You saved Emma." However, another terrifying question was swirling in Linda's heart. Was Mark really involved in this plan? And if so, it meant her beloved husband was trying to kill their daughter. The truth revealed. As police sirens echoed through the hospital, detectives from the Boston Police arrived at the pediatric ward. Chief Detective James O'Connor was a veteran with over 20 years of experience. He quickly grasped the situation in the hospital room and issued instructions for evidence preservation. "Please analyze the contents of the syringe as top priority." Detective O'Connor instructed the forensics team, and confiscate all medication records for this patient over the past 3 weeks. Nicole Johnson continued to claim innocence, even while handcuffed. "This is a misunderstanding. I was just performing my duties as a nurse." However, the audio recording on Linda's smartphone changed everything. Nicole's voice saying, "Tonight's final medication will this will fulfill my promise to Mark," echoed through the hospital room. Nicole's face went pale. That recording is... That's your own voice, isn't it, Miss Johnson?" Detective O'Connor asked calmly. "Mark refers to Mark Carter, Emma's father, doesn't it?" Nicole tried to remain silent, but Ryan gathered courage and testified. "I heard it last week at night." Ryan began to speak while wiping away tears. "Dad was talking to someone on the phone. He said, 'Emma's life insurance is 50 million yen. With this, we can start a new life.'" Linda was stunned by her son's words. She had no idea her husband had been talking about her daughter's life insurance. "So, at that time, who do you think the other person was?" Detective O'Connor asked gently. "At first, I didn't know, but Dad said the name Nicole. That's when I knew it was Nurse Nicole from the hospital," Ryan continued in a trembling voice. "Dad said, 'If you give the final medicine, everything will be over. Then we can be together.'" Linda's knees shook violently. The reality that there was an affair between her husband and Nicole, and that they were trying to kill her daughter for insurance money, couldn't be processed in her head. Dr. Williams returned from the hospital lab. His expression was serious. "Here are the emergency analysis results of the syringe contents." The doctor spoke in a trembling voice with the report in hand. Cyanide compounds were detected, 3 times the lethal dose. If it had been administered to Emma, she would have died instantly. Detective O'Connor continued the sentence. An even more shocking fact was revealed. Re-examination of Emma's blood samples detected trace amounts of heavy metals. "It appears someone has been administering small amounts of poison over the past 3 weeks," Dr. Williams explained. "That's why she had unexplained health problems. Tonight's injection was probably the final finishing touch." Linda sat down in a chair. Emma's illness was a planned attempted poisoning by her beloved husband and the nurse she trusted. At that moment, commotion occurred in the corridor. Mark Carter had arrived at the hospital. He had rushed over after receiving a call from a company colleague saying, "Your wife and child are being questioned by police at the hospital." "Linda, what happened?" Mark tried to enter the hospital room but was stopped by police officers. "You're Mark Carter, aren't you?" Detective O'Connor spoke calmly. "We have some questions for you." Mark desperately tried to understand the situation. "Is Emma okay?" "I got a call from Nicole saying they would do special treatment tonight." "You got a call from Nicole?" The detective frowned. "Please tell us in detail," Mark hurriedly explained. "She contacted me saying, 'We'll administer the final medicine tonight. Emma's condition should change by tomorrow.' So I was relieved." At that moment, Mark's cell phone rang. The call was from Nicole. Detective O'Connor instructed preparation for recording and asked Mark to answer the phone. "Hello, Nicole?" When Mark answered the phone, Nicole's desperate voice could be heard from custody. "Mark, the plan failed. The police came and I was arrested. You should run too." Mark's face went pale. Nicole's voice continued from the other end of the phone. "But don't worry, I will never betray you. Our love was real, wasn't it? You said, even if we lose Emma, we have a future together." The call was being recorded, and Mark's involvement became decisive. He dropped the phone and collapsed on the spot. "Why, Mark? Why?" Linda rushed to her husband. "Emma is your daughter. Why did you try to kill your own child?" Mark covered his face. I had debts. I embezzled company money. It would be discovered soon. I wanted to start over in a new place with Nicole. You'd kill your daughter for debt?" Linda's voice trembled with anger. "Emma wouldn't have suffered. Nicole said it would be peaceful, like sleeping." Mark continued making excuses, but his words didn't reach anyone's heart. Detective O'Connor handcuffed Mark. "Mark Carter, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and embezzlement." Ryan hugged Emma while crying. "Emma, it's okay now. Dad won't come anymore. Mom and I will protect you." Emma couldn't completely understand the situation, but seeing her brother and mother's tears made her anxious. "Mom, can't I see Dad anymore?" Linda hugged her daughter. "Emma, Dad has to go far away, but Mom and Ryan will always be with you, so it's okay." A few hours later, detoxification treatment began for Emma. According to the doctor, since the period of poison administration was relatively short, complete recovery could be expected. "Fortunately, we don't see any serious organ damage," Dr. Williams explained. "With proper treatment, she should recover completely in about a month." The next morning's newspaper reported the incident with the headline, "Pharmaceutical company employee and nurse conspire in attempted poisoning of 9-year-old girl." Atlantic Pharma, Mark's workplace, immediately fired him and began a full investigation into the embezzled funds. Nicole admitted to the affair with Mark during interrogation. The two had started dating a year ago, and when Mark's debt problems became serious, they set their sights on Emma's life insurance money. At first it was meant as a joke, Nicole tearfully confessed. But Mark's debt kept growing, and it was only a matter of time before the company found out. "I loved him too." However, no action could be justified with the word love. The act of trying to murder an innocent 9-year-old girl was unforgivable regardless of any reason. Moving forward, Linda watched over Emma and Ryan in the hospital room while thinking about their future life. She had lost her husband and faced financial uncertainty, but what mattered most was that her children were safe. "Mom," Ryan spoke quietly. "When I first heard Dad's phone call, I couldn't tell anyone. I thought adults wouldn't believe me, and I didn't want to speak badly of Dad. You ultimately did the right thing, Ryan." Linda stroked her son's hair. "It was your courage that saved Emma." As Emma's recovery progressed, she began to gradually understand the situation. "Mom, did Dad really try to hurt me?" Linda struggled to answer her daughter's question. How could she explain this reality for a 9-year-old child to accept? "Emma, sometimes adults make mistakes too. Dad made a big mistake. But it's not your fault, and it doesn't change that Mom and Ryan love you." 6 months later, the courtroom at Boston District Court was packed. The sentencing hearing for Mark Carter and Nicole Johnson was being held. Linda sat in the gallery with her children, trying to witness the end of this long nightmare. Defendant Mark Carter. For attempted murder and embezzlement, you are sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Defendant Nicole Johnson. For attempted murder and conspiracy, you are sentenced to 15 years in prison. Mark showed no expression when hearing the verdict. However, when their eyes met as he was leaving the courtroom, he showed regret for the first time. Linda quietly looked back at the man who had been her husband, but no emotions arose anymore. Nicole was permanently stripped of her nursing license and would never be able to work in medical settings again after release. The career she had built was completely lost, and she came to understand the weight of the crime she committed in the name of love. Emma had completely recovered and was discharged a month ago. The detoxification treatment was successful, and according to doctors, there would be no long-term health effects. Her weight had returned to normal, and her previous bright smile was back. "Mom, what day is today?" Emma asked, while eating breakfast in the kitchen of their new apartment. "It's the last day of Dad's trial," Linda answered gently. "Everything ends now." Ryan patted his sister's head. "Nothing scary will happen anymore, Emma." The three had moved to a small apartment in the suburbs. The divorce from Mark was finalized quickly, and through alimony, child support, and changing the beneficiary of Emma's life insurance that Mark had taken out, financial worries had disappeared. Ironically, the insurance money intended to kill Emma ended up supporting the family's life. Linda's web design work was also going well. When the incident was reported, she actually received many messages of sympathy and support, and new clients increased. "I was moved by your courageous actions. Please be happy with your children." Such letters arrived daily, especially encouraging words from women who had experienced similar situations, became support for Linda's heart. One evening while the three were walking through Boston Common, Emma suddenly stopped. "Mom, are we an unhappy family?" Linda held her daughter's hand. "Why do you ask that?" "Friends at school say Emma is pitiful because she doesn't have a dad." Ryan crouched in front of his sister. "Emma, we're not pitiful. We have real love." "What's real love?" Emma looked at her brother with innocent eyes. "Protecting each other?" Ryan answered seriously. "Me protecting Emma. Mom loving us. That's real love. Even if you're related by blood, without love, you're not family." Linda's heart warmed at her son's mature words. Through this hardship, Ryan had become far more mature than his 11 years. "That's right." Linda hugged her children. Family isn't about blood relations. It's about people who trust each other, love each other, and support each other in difficult times. We have perfect family love. Emma smiled with relief. "Then, we're a happy family. Yes, the happiest family in the world." Mark requested visits from prison, but Linda refused them all. There was no time to look back at the past. Living positively forward with her children was what mattered most to her now. At night, after the children were asleep, Linda sat alone in the living room looking at family photos. She had disposed of all old photos with Mark, and now only new photos of the three of them were displayed. Snow was beginning to fall outside the window. Next month would be Christmas. This year's Christmas would have special meaning for them. They had lost something, but what they gained was much greater: the courage to know the truth, the strength to face difficulties, and above all, an unshakable family bond. When she went to check on Ryan and Emma sleeping, they were sleeping, holding hands. The brother's love for protecting his sister would continue forever. Linda quietly murmured, "Real family is connected not by blood, but by love." And with hope for tomorrow in her heart, she vowed to continue walking toward a new life. A wonderful future surely awaited the three of them.